All right. So welcome everybody to our virtual roundtable today. We're going to be talking about sort of exhibits in general for our three roundtables this year. And our first one to be kind of centered around what I've called themes and storytelling. So again, for those of you who just joined, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a presentation, a little bit of interaction, and then hopefully we'll have plenty of time for questions. So one note to start, I have created a kind of worksheet to go along with this roundtable, and we'll be doing it for the other two roundtables as well. These are adapted from worksheets we did a few years ago and sort of updating them for today. But that is on our website under a page called Exhibit Resources. So you feel free to take a look at that. You don't have to do it now, but at some point in time, just sort of gives you a little bit more about some of the things I'll be sort of pointing out today when we're talking about exhibit themes and storytelling. So with that, I'm going to start my presentation. To that. And of course, it always takes a moment.
They're not gonna see us. That's okay, they don't need to see us. I mean, here we are.
You guys say it's
The left little.
you speak up if need be, but you guys are looking good. Okay. And again, this is also the thing as I'm pulling this up. Feel free if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat or let us know anything that you would like to know about specifically today. All right. So you should now hopefully be able to see the presentation. Is that true, everybody?
Yes.
All right. And so again, there should be, if you've chosen the collaboration function, there shouldn't be anything up there right now. Once you get to an interactive slide, you'll have the chance to input stuff directly into the presentation itself. And there is also a code at the top. You don't need the code when we're in the Zoom right now, but if for some reason you wanted to interact off your computer, you could actually use that code. Go to menti.com and use that code with like your phone or something like that. So that's just that kind of thing. So we're going to be talking about themes and storytelling today. Again, we'll be sort of pointing out a few best practices associated with that. We'll again have the group activities or interactive slides, and then hopefully some good time at the end for open share. And we have sort of three sections. I called it themes and storytelling, but we'll be talking a little bit. I've got themes, a little bit on a very brief bit on interpretation, and then also on storytelling. All right. So the first kind of best practice I wanted to share about themes are kind of these bullet points. Themes are really a great way to focus your exhibit. I think, a lot of us think that we kind of do focus our exhibit sometimes, but that themes can be a really way of making that a bit more specific for an exhibit. So it's usually 2 to 3 sentences. It's a great, again, kind of thesis statement in ways that people might think about. And just a note that a topic is not a theme. So culture is a great topic, but it's not really a theme. So a theme really gets you down into something very specific, helps focus your exhibit. So this example is from an exhibit we did a number of years ago with the Vermont Granite. It says the art of granite will explore the continuing use of buried granite in sculpture, highlighting continuity between classical techniques and the innovation and creativity of today's artists. Featuring collections from organizations, this treat to Barry's working artist highlights meaningful aspects of the artistic process. So again, this sort of gives you a focus. It's not just about granite, or it's not just about granite sculpture, but talking about sort of continuity, highlighting today's artist, featuring different collections, and talking about the artistic process.
Oh, yes. Oh, great.
These work well if they are relevant to your community today. Um, and kind of what that means can vary, but what are the things sort of in your town or your community people are interested in or trying to think about or working through? Sometimes they can be positive relevancy, sometimes they can be problems that you guys are having that you might want to explore and exhibit. I will note that what I call universal themes do exist. Universal themes are the idea of themes that are common to the human experience through time. So you're like food, shelter, family, art, the use of technology, role of the environment, landscape. These are things that sort of through our sort of general shared experience as human beings, we are tending to sort of need to deal with, need to think about, are sort of impactful on our lives. And so that's, I think, a great way of thinking about a universal theme as something that you can use as a jumping off point, knowing that that's going to be relevant to everybody kind of at every time. So our first interactive slide asks the question, what successfully featured in your exhibits or programs recently, and why do you think you're successful? So you should, if you chose a collaboration button, be able to put your information into kind of that little sidebar on the side of presentation, and it will start to pop up for folks. If you're not in collaboration mode, you can technically use the chat function. I'm going to ask my colleague Hannah or Danielle to help put whatever comes into the chat function that's an answer to the question into the presentation. Um, yeah, what themes, have you folks been doing, and or what sort of ideas have you focused your exhibits about that you thought were particularly successful?
Yeah, but I mean, we don't have any themes per se, except our,
Well, we had travel here and we had Maria, but she's gone. Person.
I mean, we just,
Scrapbooks are a theme, but that's culture.
as opposed to a topic. I mean, I guess I'm not entirely clear about the difference. And we just do exhibits based on having material.
Okay, so that is a good sort of a good. I don't know if everybody can quite hear Wendy.
No,
But that idea that your exhibits are just about the actual item or type of item itself, like you mentioned, scrapbooks, and that's really a fine way of doing exhibits. I actually think that themes work really well for larger exhibits. So oftentimes, you might have like something like a art exhibit, and that's kind of more based on the type of object or collection. Um, and that might work perfectly well, but to think about also what are you trying to get, what sort of ideas are you trying to share when you share a quilt exhibit? Or, that can be your theme. So we've got, and I will say it doesn't tell me who put the answer in. So I can always may ask for some clarification. So the first answer, beauty and the search for it by the human eye is a common theme, right? Human skill in producing various types of artwork. Yes. Yeah. And then a comparative look at transportation, particularly railroad in rural America. Excellent. I think again, like thinking about these things that are very similar for folks. Um, that transportation, getting around, you know, we were walking, something we all have to do. Photo exhibit with a theme of Main Street past Arlington. Excellent. Yes. Again, talking about that relevance to your community, the before kind of before and the now, and how people can see the through line, see where they are today and what it looked like in the past. Shelburne Historical Society introduction of our unrecorded collections and why they're important. Ooh, I like that one. Contemporary quilt making and continuing rural art making traditions. Yeah, great. Yeah, communications from Waterbury, transportation, flooding, right? I think Cheryl, that's a big one for you guys as far as this kind of continuing issue that happens over time. Then and now focus on agriculture. Fantastic. Migration and immigration. Yeah. Anybody have any thoughts on those kind of ideas or seeing anything specifically that sort of speaks to you about that? And again, feel free to like speak up or put it in the chat or raise your hand and I can call on you. They all work. Oh, Bill, thank you. So Bill is clarifying the theme was popular because viewers, and this is the Arlington exhibit, shown the oldest known side by side. So very direct comparison. Um, that's fantastic. Yeah. And then we've got the military, so soldiers in various wars over the years. Again, another sort of relatively common theme of things that we deal with. Fire service then and now. Fantastic. Right? Seeing how people are responding in the same or different ways. So Wendy, Stowe noted that not really using themes per se. Does everybody feel are people using themes or think they're using themes? Sort of kind of just thinking about topics. Memorial Day Cemetery Walk. Yes. Great theme each year. Pandemics. Mhm. Great. Fighting for civil rights through the centuries. Excellent. Yes, excellent. Chat note from Billings Farm, focus on themes. It's helpful for marketing. Right. That other piece of what we're trying to do to hopefully get people to see what we're doing with our exhibits. Alice.
Yeah, a little bit of.
All right.
Because we're semi.
So Laura is asking about the difference between themes and topics. Um, so yeah, and there's always this kind of like slight difference to me. Again, a topic is sort of really kind of a broad thing, and a theme is really where you take that piece and you make it into something that's a bit more specific. I think is a more generalized version of that idea. Um, and build sort of the several exhibits we from the overarching theme to identify topics supporting the big picture. I think that's actually a great way of also uh, thinking about that theme about what you're doing with the topic. Yes. Yeah. Anybody ever thought about kind of themes or how you come up with what you're going to do an exhibit on? That's what we're talking today. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is Trish at St. Albans Museum. Um, I guess in my mind, I'm still not able to separate out what the difference is between a topic and a theme. And I'm just wondering if you can kind of put words to that of like what your criteria are, and then maybe that leads us into the conversation of how we generate or construct the themes.
Yeah. So I guess I'm trying to think of sort of how else to frame um kind of what I guess it sort of is sort of think about um a kind of the thesis aspect of it to me, that like you're thinking of things, and we'll get into this a little bit when we talk about interpretation in just a second, but um that this is something that is on a little bit more about sort of the feelings or the thought or the things behind something, rather than just the kind of topic itself, but more like a research question. Yeah, I think also it's again, it's like to me, it's kind of like it's your thesis, right? Like this is kind of your big picture. Like what is this you're exploring, or what is it you really are trying to get to? Um, yeah, so what do we want to learn, come away with? Yeah, we'll talk about that in interpretation in a second. Michelle. That's right.
Yeah, how about, can you hear me, Eileen? Can you hear
Yep.
me, Eileen? Yeah, okay. How about this idea that anytime we can introduce continuity and yet change over time. So for example, that idea with the quilt making, uh, to me, that's like a good example of taking a topic and yet looking at it as a form of something that continues in our culture and
Mhm.
yet changes over time too.
Yeah.
Does that, I don't know, is that a good example?
Yeah.
That's how I understand the difference, let's say, between
Yep.
a theme and a topic. The theme would be things continue and yet they change at the same time. Like, so to me, the quilt making is a good example of a topic that fits into that kind
Yep.
of theme.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. And I think again that sort of just looking at comments again of sort of like relevant and connected, and really thinking about as history organizations, like this is what we're trying to do, is explore these pieces of of history. It's such a broad topic. Um, yeah, so industrial history, but the theme states that you want your audience to leave what you want to learn about industrial history. Yes. I think again that's a great way of explaining that. I'm going to actually move that to the interpretation piece of sort of taking something, and what we sort of say is making choices. So again, history is a broad thing. A theme could be a broad thing. A topic could be very broad. Our interpretation, and when we're talking about interpretation, is about making choices. So we are presenting specific information or certain viewpoints. We are sort of working to guide our audience, as well as sort of hopefully get them to sort of learn the things that we want them to potentially learn, or have the connection that we want them to have, rather than just presenting all of the information that's available on anything. And I will say that, I think a lot of sometimes we're a little bit uncomfortable thinking about that we are making choices, but we are. And so the more you can do that from a standpoint of knowing that you are making a choice, or knowing that the information that you're sharing even already has a viewpoint, I think the better off we are at kind of knowing where those choices are being made from. We will often use interpretation to relay messages, again, that sort of note about the theme, about like what do we want them to learn, where do we want them to find the relevancy, how do we sort of sort of figure out, what that means to both the organization and your exhibit and what that means to them. And I think that comes back to also some of the things you're talking about, like social media and marketing, like these other ways in which we're messaging or we're trying to talk to our visitors or our audience about something. Interpretation is how we kind of relay some of those messages. I think we can encourage dialogue with good interpretation. So that can be pointing out things like specific features on an artifact and what it means, or drawing, again, parallels, as we just saw with the themes, between something in the past and today. So those are great kind of messages to work. And good interpretation also involves others to expand our viewpoints. And so that can be very directly by involving folks in the interpretation and exhibit process. So outside groups. So if you're doing an exhibit on quilting or quilt makers, like, are you involving a quilting group to help you sort of work on what you're going to share about that? And I think that, can also be looking at different sources. So you may, as an organization, have specific artifacts or specific archival materials. Are you looking toward others? So again, with the Art of Granite exhibit, talking about using multiple organization collections. So that's you to expand viewpoints. You can look to different sources outside your organization as well as inside your organization to sort of help expand what you're able to present and talk about. And so this is kind of just an example from one exhibit about the ways in which we can use interpretation when we're talking about, this one is specifically about a specific artifact in an exhibit. And so the top one is kind of an informational label, which says, in 1941, a German bomber attacked an aircraft factory in England. This worker's past was found in the wreckage. Totally great information, right? Like, that's cool. That's 100% accurate about what it is. But is that something that really sort of both helps to relay a message, brings our visitor or audience into what you're trying to sort of to see by presenting this artifact? Because a lot of our artifacts, they have a lot of meaning and a lot of deep meaning, especially. So the interpretive label for this states, war changed everything. Thousands of women left their homes and families to work in factories to support the war effort, but it was not safe. After a bomber destroyed the factory where she worked, Thelma Barlow's past was her only possession that was not destroyed. Luckily, Thelma survived. Like, that is a much more powerful, I would argue, label to have in your exhibit than just the informational one. And they both present information about and contextualize this piece, but I think the interpretive one really sort of gives you a bigger sense of what you're relaying to folks. Does that make sense? And on our exhibit worksheet, we go through some of the ways in which you can kind of work with interpretation. And again, I think we got that with a little bit on our theme talk. Things like showing cause and effect, using visual metaphors involving the senses, uh, including a human presence in your text. I think this label does a really good job at that, as far as like really bringing this person, Thelma, to your exhibit and using her specific artifact to really tell you about like what she represents and who she was in that. And I think, one of the other things about on our worksheet, we talk about good interpretation does is it's connecting audience to your meaning, but also allows audience members to have and maintain their own perspective. So it's going to be something, obviously, viewing this exhibit could have had some experience, could have had grandparents or parents or somebody that had experience related to the war that they can bring into kind of thinking about what that means to them as well. All right. So sort of interpretation wise, this is kind of another interactive, and this is going to give us a word cloud. So this is based more on using a word or two, but we're going to pick a general theme, which is also a very broad theme right now. It's it needs actually a bit more detail to it, but it's all the letters I could fit on the slide. Agricultural technology, 19th century. So I said, what are some topics visitors should learn about, understand, or be exposed to? So what do you think when I say something like agricultural technology in the 19th century? What would you want people to understand or learn about when you're thinking about that kind of theme? And again, feel free to stick some words in the word cloud. Innovation. Oh, I love it. Uh, and or chat, or again, if you want to talk about any of it, feel free. Yeah. Favor. All right. Hard work. Organization. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that goes along again, kind of with innovation a little bit. And so it's starting to think about technological advances. Yep. Some of these words you think about how might we sort of use interpretation to to talk about some of these things or to put them in our exhibit, economies of scale, working conditions, climate, adaptation, loss, geography, gender roles, with animals, love them all. Yeah. Loss, right? In Vermont, especially. So if you were to take any one of these kind of words or ideas, um, and sort of work with an interpretive lens, what kind of artifact do you think you'd choose? And this is something for you to, again, put it in the chat or to unmute yourself, raise your hand. What kind of artifacts would speak to some of these topics or these ideas you want people to learn about? Tools. What kind of tools? Whose tools? What would you say about a tool? Different tools used by men and women. Excellent. Yeah. So that idea that we're sort of again showing kind of differences.
Where are we supposed to respond? Because I see here that it won't let me because I already put something
Already
up for
put
the
something in.
slide.
Yeah. So respond either in the or again unmute yourself like you just did. Or raise your hand. Either any of these things. It's a round table. People can talk. Hand tools, pesticide sprayer. Of course, Billings Farms. I chose the you've probably got this all down. Workwear, child labor and ag, the development of trains. I like it. Yep. Yeah. There's people working. Yeah. So are people sort of seeing that link between again this idea that we have or what we want somebody to learn and then how we make a choice. We are making choices right here to sort of think about how we express that in an exhibit. And I will say that this is, we're talking about exhibits, like there are different ways of expressing these ideas or these things we want people to learn about in different platforms. So obviously might be different if you're publishing your newsletter or even on social media, but the exhibit is a very specific type of platform, and the ways in which we can express or interpret ideas will be different than some other platforms. But then again, we're making, okay, we want to talk about social class. How do we do, what do we use to do that? Um, and how do we use one of our prime things, which is artifacts or archival materials, to do so, I think is a really powerful way in which exhibits work. That's a great thing to be thinking of. Accounts, ledgers, pictures. Yep. Yes. People talking. Fantastic. Again, another way to involve people like in your exhibit and in your interpretation is letting somebody else speak about their experiences in your exhibit. Oh, Laura, yes. The hard part is narrowing down with space limitations. Absolutely. And again, this is why I think sort of this idea about interpretation is a really great thing to be thinking of and working on when you're working on your exhibits. Is thing on wall. And so how do we sort of make those choices sort of keep that message and those messages tight and specific to help folks really get to what we want them to get out of it, and have some very clear ideas behind it really can help to do that.
Are there some questions that you might ask yourself to try and pare down lots of things? Because I'm sure you end up with baskets full of ideas and artifacts, but then how do you keep it focused?
Right. So yeah, David, sort of the questions you can ask yourselves. Anybody have any sort of thoughts or ideas on sort of how you help down, especially from an interpretive standpoint? When again you have all of these possibilities and you want to focus them. Does anybody have any things that they do or have had success in doing when trying to do that?
Everybody's perfect.
Well, I mean, I can tell you a little bit. How many items do you have to support the topic, Laura? I was gonna say sometimes it does, sort of say, oh, we have enough of this kind of thing to talk about this, so let's focus on that. Bill talks about focus group. I think that's a great way. And that focus group could be internal or external. I think sort of working towards bringing in some external, again, especially for a bigger exhibit, or something that's going to be in your organization longer term. It's a great way to think about what are people interested or what do people want to focus on. That's especially essential, I think, if you want to think about what your audiences are and what they want to learn about or know about. Focus groups are really helpful in that. What are there ways to people sort of help to focus themselves or work on making those choices, as we said, for interpretation? Yeah, at least talking about having the theme helps use the artifacts that are most interesting. Ooh, Elise, how are you defining most interesting?
It's almost like you could have everything in a pile and rank everything. What would if I had to pick out just one, what would I pick? And then start to go down through.
Yep. Sexy.
Sexy.
I mean, again, there are some items that are definitely more sexy than others. That's for sure.
Elise is funny. She's working with Lisa Evans now.
Okay. Yeah,
Did
working
you know
on the big
about
new
that project?
Burlington. Yeah, the big new Burlington History Center.
Burlington History and
Yeah.
Culture Center.
Yes.
It's coming.
That's what Lisa's working on now, is the Burlington History and Culture Center.
And yeah, if you don't have a story to
We have a
accompany it,
sexy
don't
theme.
show
We
it.
have the porn movie from the 70s.
There you go.
We should totally do that thing about that. It's hilarious.
I love it. Yeah, and I think that's, and also this aspect of like obviously there's a certain importance or a certain kind of factual or informational piece about history, but like we can have fun too with our themes. Like they don't all have to be
Oh, that's like the couch earlier. Did you see what Niels wrote? If I don't have a story to accompany an artifact, then I don't show it.
yeah, right? Yeah, like what is like sexy
Yep.
is story for us, I think. Yeah. Michelle.
Yeah, I think I know I've seen lots of exhibits where there might only be actually one, real live three-dimensional artifact there, but they flesh out the story by borrowing pictures from, lots of other places to support the story that they're trying to tell. And these days, the way you can go online and download a picture from, like you can call up the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and download a picture off their website if it shows, an object that's going to flesh out the story more that you're trying to tell. So I think these days it's easier than ever to pull together an exhibit, even if you don't have all the right artifacts. You know what I mean? If you don't have it in your collection, it seems to me you can still have the exhibit by borrowing pictures from other collections that do,
Yeah.
is my view on that. No?
Yeah, excellent point. Um, I think again within the kind of like small scale, sort of way in which in Vermont we can sort of see who else has something, but also absolutely, Michelle, these days the ability to access things, like especially records, archival materials, that we may not have before is huge. Uh, 3D copies of artifacts you wish you had. Ooh, that's a great one as far as when I think, especially for folks to think about when you're thinking about what we might call traditional collecting practices and some of the stories that those left out and the ones that we want to tell today. So we might not have the artifacts. And so that's a way again of sort of like other groups or other places where you might be able to find something that showcases that experience, even if you don't specifically have it. All right. So I'm going to move us on just to sort of the last bullet point today, which was about storytelling. And again, I think which is great to kind of we're working through and into this story and the sexiness, Elise, of it. I I do. I love that. I'm gonna keep it now. So storytelling. So storytelling is really a way of thinking about kind of like the content that you have or the ways in which you're expressing information. It builds on interpretation. Um, but the idea of storytelling, and this is something you could use in exhibits, you can use it. There's a big push in things like social media and your fundraising campaigns and all that stuff is sort of really sort of trying to focus about storytelling. And there's a few reasons for that. One, storytelling sort of helping to build emotional connections. So again, when you look back to that label from that past that survived the or this kind of the way in which they're phrasing the text is storytelling, right? And you're building that emotional connection between this artifact, this bit of information, about World War II and this person. You're sort of bringing it all together because we as human beings, again, we tend to sort of remember and react to things where we have a connection, especially emotionally more. We'll remember it more, right? Than just say this happened on this date at this time. Sort of thinking about how you present information in a storytelling way uh, sort of gives you narrative structure and characters. And these are, again, talking about sort of universal pieces. Most people are very familiar with things like narrative structure because we get it on TV or in the movies or when we're reading a book. Like these kind of ways in which we understand sort of presentation of information. So things like narrative structure sort of kind of follow some sort of progression, gives you kind of an intro, a middle piece, and then the kind of like what happens, and then either the the problem or the takeaway, and then the conclusion as well. And it's a great kind of way to build a structure of an exhibit. Like characters, those people, and you can use very specific people like that. Like that past it, Thelma was a very specific person, or you can use kind of build a character into something where you don't maybe not necessarily know the specific person, but you can create an amalgam of a person or a character to use with that thing. And then kind of challenges and triumphs. Everybody likes kind of like the person, sort of knowing what the challenge is and then hopefully triumphing in the end. Again, with that pass you saw, Thelma, she went to the factory, she worked hard. Oh no, there was, the challenge was they got bombed, but she made it out alive. And that's kind of that triumph piece with that. Not everything will have that for a story. Not everything comes out wonderful in the end. But sort of working through kind of some of those challenges and triumphs, people to understand that. And I will say, for us, especially as historians, people say storytelling and they say, well, storytelling is making stuff up. And that's not what we're talking about here. Authenticity is still key. That you can use your information and the stories behind people and places and events, and tell it in a way that's kind of more narrative while still keeping it factual. So that's we're not giving up our factual historic information for storytelling. We're just telling it in a different way. So this is from something that we did exhibit just this past year. And it's about some solar eclipse glasses. So it says, gives you very specific dated information, but also kind of puts it in a storytelling fashion. So total solar eclipse ran across most of the Northeast, including Vermont. Schools and businesses treated the day like a holiday. Newspapers warned motorists about driving during it. Does this all sound familiar? Scientists and photographers flocked to Vermont to document it in real time. Months of planning and excitement hinged on one unpredictable condition, a sunny day. Cloudy weather around Vermont created lackluster viewing areas. However, eclipse watchers in St. Albans received a fortunate break from the clouds, and pilots Ralph Stancliffe and Ralph Mooney flew out to view the eclipse from above, wearing welder's goggles to their eyes. I think this is again, it's a really great example of there's some very factual information in there about the eclipse and what was going on in 1932, but it uses characters. So two Ralphs, I guess, who flew out in this great kind of valiant effort to see an eclipse in their plane, with this, this break in the clouds, and kind of this really sort of compelling information that's being shared. And then again, after kind of the end, the total solar eclipse of 2024, which we were in or viewing at that point in time, will not be able to see it again until 2106. So that's sort of, again, giving that conclusion to what we're looking at for the information, the kind of the triumph, and then like the conclusion. So the sort of last thing we're gonna do for kind of interactive is we're gonna look at this dress and kind of, I want to say we're gonna make up a story. So I will say authenticity is key. This dress does have a story, but we're gonna kind of use it as an example, something where we can create a story around it. And so what I want to ask you, and I'll go back for just a second so you can see it again, is kind of to look at the dress, and it's a little small on the screen. It's kind of a pink and white 19th century gown. It's got a little lace in the bottom and a train. I would call a fancy dress of the time. And so based kind of on that and what you might know that kind of dress, which I think a lot of us tend to have in our organization collections, what might the physical attributes of that dress tell you about its purpose, meaning, or history? So what are some of the things by just looking at it that can help us tell about that? And how would you put that into kind of more of a story than just factual information? Like, it's pink. Well, yes, it is. But what might that kind of tell you about some purpose, meaning, or history, or what dress like that to tell you if you knew what its history was. The lives of the women who wore it and the seamstress who made it. Yeah, fabric, what kind of condition, who wore it. Yeah. Cut, cloth adornments, function, how the colors compare to a more functional dress, the fringes, the details, special occasions. Absolutely. Who did the trim on the hem? Did the owner do it herself? Where did the materials come from? Labor and trade routes? Yeah. Colors compared to a more functional dress. Photo of working making these types of dresses. Yep, skilled labor. Worn for a specific event and what was worn under it. How did women get ready? Ooh, I love that one. What was it? The occasion. Yeah. Color suited to warmer weather. I want to say this prompt, again, it's a very sort of specific question prompt, but the idea behind it is sort of looking at the physical aspects of that can bring this kind of information. Again, and this is another way of which you can kind of ask questions and collect information as you're thinking about the artifact and what story you want to tell and say, how do I tell the story? Well, what do the physical attributes tell me about it? Or can I learn from those? And then how can I put that into story? Um, Exercise for sort of working towards pulling story out of something if you don't, especially if you don't have a story already for something. Like sometimes you'll have a specific story that you want something to represent. Sometimes you have a thing, and then you need to figure out what the story is behind it. Women today still dress similarly in cinching their waist, accentuate bodice for fancy events. Again, bringing that relevancy piece back to the story. Compare and contrast today, yesterday. Again, it's a great story to tell. Process of putting it on. Yes. I love Danielle's note of context. Lots of school visitors assume this is a wedding dress based on the colors. Yeah, so I like that idea that the assumptions that people bring, cultural assumptions that folks can have, class, social relations, material, yeah, made by a seamstress or at home. So I will tell you a tiny bit about this dress that I know. And actually, Danielle's not too far off. This is a dress that was actually, um, and I'm gonna forget, I don't have my notes up in front of me. A woman, she actually, I think a seamstress might have made it for her, but it's actually two dresses combined. So the cream colored dress was originally her wedding dress. She used that and a pink dress that she had, another special occasion dress that she had, and she put them together to make this dress. And this is the dress she wore to the opening of the Pavilion Hotel in Montpelier. So again, a great way of sort of thinking about reuse and recycling, right, for folks and why people were doing it at that time. Sort of class, where was this person in relation to some others? So somebody who might have been of even higher status might have had a whole new dress, to wear, whereas this person was like, well, I need to kind of put two really fancy dresses together to make this beautiful dress here. But I'm going to this grand occasion in Montpelier. at the time. And I think that, again, this is another thing that a lot of people can relate to from a storytelling standpoint, which makes it fun to me. Any other thoughts on kind of storytelling or the use of story in our exhibits and what that can kind of do for us?
I have a higher level question if I can ask. So
Yes.
our
Mhm.
society has been certainly volunteers, and you end up picking topics from various places, very randomized. Do folks have any sort of ways or programs that they use to sort of tie like an entire museum together? So,
Mm.
um,
Like that question.
yeah, so it's really organizing everything, because right now I'm starting on all of our collection, recording it and just learning about all kinds of things, but then you can certainly have some interest, but how to provide continuity to everything that you're doing.
That is a fantastic question. Any thoughts?
Nobody's doing it, huh?
I mean, I'll share what we did 20 years ago when we were doing the Vermont History Museum. We have our Freedom and Unity exhibit, our main exhibit. So again, that idea that we're trying to pull in all of Vermont history. And again, it ended up being grouped by kind of both chronologically and then by kind
Yeah,
of
because
these
you have a
topics.
ton of money.
Well, relatively speaking, but you can do it. Again, that idea like that sort of thinking about the choices and the themes and the holistically, especially for when you're thinking about your whole organization, is something that is a great thing to do together as a group or as an organization.
I see some Billings Farm, you use an interpretive master plan. What does that look like? I'd be interested in seeing something about that.
Yeah, we have a collaborative document that was put together around, it's kind of around what we want people to know, what themes we want to sort of work within. So kind of bringing together, we're a larger organization, so bringing together different departments, but breaks down into kind of like your values as an institution and, kind of relating to what your mission is. And then it helps you have a set of things you can check against in terms of when you come up with an idea or you're trying to figure out how things put together, you have like a reference. We started out as a dairy farm making butter in the late 1800s. So a lot of the things for us relate to agricultural history, farming as a business, sort of industrial revolution, changes in agricultural technology. So like all that's in our interpretive master plan. So then when we're looking through our collection or our objects, we can see if things make sense or don't make sense, and it helps you to like start to sort of organize. So it's just kind of thinking on that high level, maybe about kind of what your purpose is, if you're about a town or you're about a certain time period, or then what you want to say about that as a set of filters.
Would you see, so to repeat back, it sounds like you're telling like a high level story of your organization. It's like a 2 sentence theme for the whole
We
place.
have, yeah, we have like 5 different themes. So,
Okay.
but yeah, essentially it's like, talking about care for the land, the farm as a business,
Wow.
innovation. So we have like these, and then everything kind of relates, but essentially what you're saying, yeah, just a little bit more fleshed out than two. We have a mission statement, which is essentially the 2 sentences, and then the interpretive values and themes that kind of nest underneath that.
Does that help control discussions about what you're going to be doing?
Oh yeah, yeah, 100%, yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of the purpose, is to sort of like bring some alignment and have everybody, internal staff, trustees, kind of everybody on the same page about what the organization's trying to do educationally.
Okay. That's good to hear. Because part of it for me is the struggle of people that have been here forever that know the town's history. But, you know, they're not writers, they're not presenters, but they've got a lot of information. And, you know, I had mentioned something about, well, we should tell the Shelburne story. And I went, oh my God, and just kind of freaked out. So it might be a good process to go through and just say, what is the story on a really high level? You know, I even saw your post-its in the background of, you know, creating themes or something and post.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right. Any other questions people had for the day or things they wanted to share that we haven't gotten to about themes and storytelling and interpretation and kind of this first roundtable? Oh, hang on. I'm gonna try to do it. We're getting some feedback from you guys, so I had to mute you. Where are you? There we are.
Okay, go ahead, Barbara.
Who's your audience?
Who,
For
who
whom are these exhibits being fleshed
presented?
out for and presented?
The camera's down there.
I know,
There.
I know, but my glasses won't let me look down there.
Well, here.
There we go.
Okay.
We have a lot of one-time, short period tourists that probably max 6 minutes, sometimes longer if one of our docents is talkative. So we have to have something that's short. It's the 30-second reading idea. So what do, who are, other than like Billings and Shelburne Farms and Shelburne Museum, who's the clientele?
I'd like to add to that, yeah, the vast majority of people who come in are not locals. The locals seem to avoid us almost. And so our museum consists of, 10 or 12 vignettes of things from our collection so that we appeal to a little bit of almost everything. And we have one or two really changing exhibits. We aim for one a year to change, 1 year and then change, but we do have some more static exhibits. A lot of it is because we've only got about 10 people who are we're all volunteer. It's what materials do we have, and is somebody interested in pulling it together and maybe doing some research and creating the exhibit. So we are limited by those factors. So there's not a lot of heavy thought put into most of our exhibits. It's what do we have and who wants to do it.
Mhm.
Not an uncommon theme I'm hearing.
Yeah, there's always going to be a practical aspect to any of this work that we're trying to do. One last question from Elise. Anyone using AI? Good question.
Not yet. We're too old. We don't know how.
It's actually a lot of fun. You should just go and fool around.
I say, Wendy, Trish is saying that, so Wendy and Barbara are from the Stowe Historical Society, Trish. So fantastic spot to go check out.
We try hard. Yeah, we try.
No one's using AI yet. Yeah, I don't think I don't think we've used it for anything these days yet. So I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I just had a big conversation about deep fakes yesterday with someone. So, whew, it's going to be interesting.
I'm
Well,
going,
one theme could be showing people how to spot fakes. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
we're going to be moving into a new building next month, which will take the archives out of the basement and give us a lot of space. And I have to design new themes. And one of our members has a Native American artifact exhibit that we will have on loan. So we'll be adding that to our Bellows Falls history. So it's going to be creating a whole new space and museum.
Nice. Wonderful. All right. We're a couple minutes over, but any sort of last big thoughts, questions, things that folks really needed to talk about today that we didn't get to? All right.
Good.
Awesome.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you guys. So our next roundtable will be February 18th. And we'll be talking about panels and labels. We'll get a little bit more into some of the specifics of of what we write and how we write it, and then a little bit of practical info about how we actually put stuff on the walls. So I think that'll be sort of a fun mix of things to do. But thank you all again. For all of you who have registered, I'll be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording, a link to the interactive slide materials, and the exhibit worksheet as well. Thank you guys very much and have a great rest of the day.
Stay warm.